Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're taking a deep dive into a truly fascinating, grim-dark, gothic fable drawn from the text Architect of the Hollow Void. It's a mythic, deeply philosophical narrative centered all around a figure known as the Last Thinker, a Hollow King who is just utterly consumed by a profound cosmic dread. We're going to explore the extreme lengths this sovereign will go to escape the chaotic nature of existence, and how his desperate quest for absolute control ultimately leads to his own unmaking. It is a brilliant exploration of philosophy, power, and the frankly terrifying cost of total order. Okay, let's set the stage here by defining the core conflict driving the Hollow King. To really grasp this fable, we have to look at it through the lens of Nietzschean philosophy, specifically the tension between two completely opposing forces. First, you have Dionysian reality. Think of this as the messy, chaotic, vibrant storm of actual life. The Hollow King is terrified of this because it threatens to completely dissolve his hyper-rational order. So to combat that fear, he relies on a desperate need for an Apollonian illusion. This is his crimson mask, a sterile, incredibly rigid state of absolute, unchanging order. This clash perfectly captures the king's fundamental dilemma. How does he balance the authentic, messy reality of the cosmos against his chosen solution of a rigid cage and a forced vacuum? The text tells us that his very form flickers with the volatile weight of this forced vacuum. He literally has to manually anchor his presence against the Dionysian reality of life. He is holding back the storm of existence by suffocating himself inside an empty, lightless cage of his own making.
Part 1. Parable 5. The Architect's Unearned Majesty. To explain his weary obsession with stasis, the Last Thinker actually recites parables from the Cosmic Creed. The first tale follows an architect who set out to build a magnificent cathedral of unearned majesty. His ultimate goal? Achieving absolute stasis. He wanted a permanent freeze frame of perfection, designed specifically to deny natural decay. But, as the text reveals, this grand structure was actually just a hollow deception. It was a shroud designed to mask a really deep, weary obsession with the void. He wasn't building to celebrate life, you know? He was building to stop time dead in its tracks.
The tragic irony of the architect's success is just profound, because he built a structure that fundamentally denied the natural laws of decay. He found himself entirely crushed by the burden of maintaining his own constructed illusions. He achieved his perfect, unchanging monument, sure, but in doing so, he became its only prisoner. He transformed into a monument to exhaustion, permanently trapped beneath the immense, crushing weight of his own lie.
Part 2. Parable 6. The Cage of Stasis.
This second parable deepens the descent into the void, shifting the scale from architecture to the stars themselves. We meet a thinker who, driven by deep cosmic dread, sought to replace the messy reality of the cosmos with a rigid cage. And he actually succeeds in stopping the motion of the stars and freezing the natural decay of the Earth. Why? Well, he believed this was the only way to achieve the supreme realization of the absolute I. He wanted total, uninterrupted sovereignty over existence, entirely untethered from the chaotic nature of the world outside himself. So the crucial point here is that in his quest for supreme control, this thinker committed a profound form of spiritual suicide. He succeeded in freezing existence, but as the story reveals, his world became a silent graveyard. By forcing this vacuum, he completely destroyed the authentic spirit of life. He got exactly what he wanted, absolute order. But the cost was that freedom was permanently traded for the hollow silence of the One.
Part 3. Parable 7. The Ugliest Man's Burden.
This final parable shifts focus to a sovereign ruler, and it reveals the ultimate psychological trap of trying to rule an empty and reflectionless void. This sovereign attempts to replace the messy multiplicity of his kingdom with the singular narrative of his own design. At first glance, he appears to be a sublime architect of order, but the reality is far darker. He evolves into an exhausted figure akin to Nietzsche's concept of the ugliest man. He's forced to spend every single moment of his eternity manually holding up a shroud of historical fabrication, desperately trying to hide the terrifying void that sits right beneath his own throne. His own realization captures the horrifying reality of this success. In his desperate attempt to control everything, he negated every wind of change and shattered the boundary stones of reality.
But absolute control is always a trap. He realized way too late that by destroying all external forces, he had merely ensured that his final cage would have no doors. He locked himself inside an inescapable fabrication of his own making, with no way out and absolutely nothing real left to rule.
Part 4. The Anatomy of Spiritual Suicide.
If we lay out the profound lessons from these three parables side by side, they form a grim anatomy of what the text calls spiritual suicide. It's a clear pattern. In every single instance, whether it's the architect building a cathedral of stasis, the thinker freezing the cosmos, or the sovereign forcing a singular narrative, the attempt to force absolute Apollonian order merely masks a profound inherent decay. And ultimately, it exhausts and destroys the creator.
So, what are the core tenets you absolutely need to take away from this? First, the Hollow King's strength is an absolute illusion. Architectural order is just a hollow deception. Seeking absolute stasis requires a denial of natural decay, which goes against the very fabric of existence. Maintaining this sterile illusion doesn't make you a god, it makes you a monument to exhaustion. The ultimate lesson is that seeking a rigid cage to protect yourself from chaos fundamentally destroys the authentic spirit of life. Part 5. Monologue, Justifying the Void. The text doesn't just end with a warning, though. It pushes even further. Dropping his voice to a cold, hyper-rational whisper, the last thinker addresses us directly, fully embracing the hollow deception. Notice how he weaponizes his own self-awareness here. He knows we see his deep insecurity, but he claims this cynical knowledge actually anchors his form. He states he is a Hollow King by choice. In his mind, only an utterly empty vessel is capable of containing the massive, volatile negative energy of a world he has intentionally and systematically stripped of its vitality.
And this perfectly highlights his twisted, hyper-rational logic. He hears the accusation of spiritual suicide, but flips it into a badge of honor. He views flattening history and branding the rich, messy tapestry of life as heresy, not as a failure, but as the ultimate cultural castration of the chaotic. He truly believes he has taken the burden of the cosmos onto his own shoulders, replacing the chaotic nature of existence with a sterile peace that he claims we are just too weak to endure ourselves.
He furiously insists that he is the only one strong enough to maintain this state. Listen to his defense of his Apollonian illusion, his crimson mask. He claims it isn't a lie at all, but rather the ultimate philosophical triumph. It is the boundary of the absolute I, his total supreme self, that has finally outrun the not I, meaning everything external, chaotic, and beyond his control. He has literally severed his connection to the natural decay of time itself, just to become absolute. Which brings us to his terrifying, tragic climax. This reveals the absolute core of his dark philosophy. He acknowledges what reality actually is. Truth is a storm. The Dionysian reality is loud, it's dangerous, and it is completely uncontrollable. And because he fears that storm so deeply, he chooses the alternative. He would rather rule over a silent, lightless cage forever, a sovereignty that never ends, than face the dangerous, beautiful storm of authentic truth. The architect of the Hollow Void leaves us right here, staring directly into the dark triptych of the last thinker's mind. It's such a profound exploration of how the fear of life's chaos can drive us to build our very own prisons. And it leaves us with a really chilling question to reflect on. Is the pursuit of absolute control ever really worth trading your freedom for the hollow silence of the void? When the storm of life gets messy and unpredictable, how far would you go to build your own cage of stasis? Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating text with me today. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.